Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out for a wonderful day 2 here at Collision. As Kat said, my name's Tom Verrilli, and I'm the Chief Product Officer at Twitch. Don't worry if you're not familiar with Twitch and its product. I promise if you go home and you tell your kids about it, they will think it's very cool. When I look at the consumer media landscape and the consumer app landscape over the last 5 years, there's 2 words that almost every app uses to describe itself: social and community. And I think in almost every instance we are using those 2 words incorrectly and too often. And so I think there is no stage at Collision that understands the power and importance of using the right words like this one. And so what I want to do with you over the next 15 minutes is talk a little bit about what does social mean, what does community mean, and why are those 2 things so different when we keep using them interchangeably. So to do that, let's go right back and look at the history of the word. Why is it that we call it social media? And the honest answer is because when it started, it was. Social media was so called because it was the literal transference of our IRL lives online. Now, I'm going to age myself a little bit here, but I was in my 2nd year of uni when Facebook came to Australia. You still needed a .edu address in order to get access to it. And the minute I did, it was very clear to me that the people who were building it had the same life I had and were building an application that made my life online possible. Because if you go all the way back, Facebook had 2 features. Groups that were easy to join, so I could create Econ 1001 and I could swap notes and I could find out what our class schedules were and I could find a buddy. And photos, which meant that next morning I could wake up and very blearily check what the heck happened last night, and immediately, if you recall, go and untag myself from very unflattering photos before internet sharing etiquette emerged. And the true revolution of that is it completely expanded the size of my social network. That's where the term comes from. The number of friends you used to have was limited by time. It was gated by the number of people you could physically, proximately talk to in any given week, in any given day. And all of a sudden, that's not true anymore. I can stay current with your life by catching up on updates. And my definition of friend, from the literal verb that they made in the app, expanded from 15 to 20 people that I knew well into hundreds of people that I was familiar with, right? This seems silly to think about now, but it used to be a whole thing that we would talk about at the pub about how many Facebook friends is too many friends, and do I need to curate and prune my friend list? And so social media exploded because it managed to take our online life and make it accessible, and by doing that, scale it. But with scale comes a problem. It turns out that your friends aren't interesting enough. On every social app that has ever existed, 5% of people produce 95% of content, and everybody else is largely consuming. I'd like to think I'm an interesting person, but most days at uni, I was not exactly making amazing content for everybody else to get involved in. And particularly once the feed was invented, that's a problem. The premise of a feed and your experience of it today is that a feed is infinite. I can just keep scrolling for more content. But that wasn't true back when these were true social networks. The feed was, unfortunately, for the makers of these apps, deeply finite. The solution for that was found in a piece of technology invented nearly 20 years earlier, in a technique called collaborative filtering, right? Today, this just looks like recommendations in your feed, but collaborative filtering was a term, like most things on the internet, coined by Xerox PARC in the early 90s. And at its most basic, it is a mathematical propensity that says if you and I both like one thing, what's the likelihood that I like something else that you like? And it enabled the feed to become infinite. Social media actually has 3 powers that mean that collaborative filtering goes from something that was being used to recommend you books and recommend you restaurants to something that has created a hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollar industry in social media. 1, the content in your feed is what savvy marketers came to call snackable. It takes me days to read a book. It takes me seconds to read a tweet. So I can learn very fast what users like and don't like. 2, social networks had hundreds of millions and eventually billions of users. So I can build not 1 degree of recommendations or 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but an unlimited number of degrees of interests for people around the world. And 3, it coincided with the explosion of cloud computing, which means computating all of these recommendations across people becomes trivial and cheap. And all of a sudden, the feed and the social network that you know is born, and all of this value is unlocked. But something really fundamental happened in that transition, and we didn't keep up with the verbiage as it came through. Because when social networks were a replication of my real world online, it was truly social, and it was affinity born of familiarity. I like the content in my feed because I know and like all the people in my feed, and so I'm pleased when you get married or get a puppy, or pleased when you graduate from university, or there's just a cute photo of you there. What a feed fundamentally powered by collaborative filtering is a transition from affinity through familiarity to affinity through similarity. The feed that you open and scroll through today on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook is not social media. It is almost by definition tribal media. Here are things that people that are like you like. And if you feel like society is more polarized than it used to feel, it's because all you hear from are things made by people like you. You are being mathematically propensitied into a group of people who think the same and like the same things, and that actually isn't what your social life is like. At Twitch, one of the things that we believe is that OG social media was actually community media. As I said, when you replicate your real world online, you are bringing with it the diverse community and all of the relationships that precede the format that you're involved in. And the reason I think community is such a misused word by app developers, marketers, and journalists is that it actually bears no resemblance to tribal media. Community has 3 fundamental requirements that social media in no way meets. 1, recognition, repetition, and investment. And actually what we've built over the last 10 years at Twitch, and for the 5 years of Justin TV before that, is an app that is truly rooted in community because it has those 3 fundamental facets. For those of you not familiar, Twitch is a live streaming site. It is exclusively live. You can't make content on Twitch without going live, and your audience can't see that content if they weren't live watching it there with you. But fundamentally, what that does is it creates a repetition layer. I went to the gym at my hotel this morning. No one is going to say that I'm a member of of the hotel's community, right? You become a member of a community by doing something over and over. I am a member of the community in my neighborhood because I live there and I go home every day, right? I am a member of the community at my kids' preschool because I go there every day and I see those parents all the time. I can be a member of a community at a bar or a coffee shop that I frequent because I am there often. And that precondition of community in repetition creates recognition. I become friends with the parents at my kids' school because I see them all the time. When I go to a gym regularly, there is that knowing nod from the guy who sees me often at 6 a.m., right? When you are going to show up and the barista already knows your coffee order, it creates that special pang in your heart that you are known and you are seen. And that is fundamentally different to the experience you're having online. And the net result of those 2 things is you are invested in that. And what I mean by invested in that is your communities are either, if you think about it, things that you physically invest money to be a part of, whether or not that's a gym, whether or not that's a school, or a thing that it would cost you a lot to lose, right? You hate it when you have to change baristas because now that person screws up your order all the time. It's really sad when that kid moves away from their school and suddenly there's no parent to talk to at the truly awkward kids' birthday parties that you spend your Saturdays at. You need that degree of repetition, recognition, and investment, and that's what we build for at Twitch. Because it is live, you have to be there in order to see it and derive value from it, which means when we're building discovery at Twitch, I have a strong opinion about what I want you to see. I want you to go back and watch the thing that you watched yesterday, and yesterday I wanted you to go back and watch the same thing that you watched the day before, because the streamer can see you and says hello. I've been watching a stream by 2 of mine, I would now call them friends, Fred and Emily. They have a stream on Twitch called Fremily. And when I pop into their stream every day, they stop and they say, "Hey Tom, how are you going?" They know who I am and they know what's going on. And that creates a totally different loop from an app where you open a feed and the app developer of that feed doesn't actually care what you watch. The algorithm is just solving for what will get you to spend the most time in there. The propensity is, what is the likelihood that if you look at this TikTok, you'll look at the next? And in looking at the next, what is the likelihood that in watching that one, you'll watch the next one? There's no desire for you to watch the same thing. They don't care if you build a bond with the human being making the thing. They just care that you keep watching. That isn't communal, and it's not social. It's actually deeply isolating. Recognition is the other thing that it doesn't create. When you watch a stream on Twitch, one of these wonderful streamers and their faces is live on stream, and they can talk to you, and they can see you. And the exchange of recognition totally changes both of your experiences. If I'm making short-form content for another app, I produce that content alone, I edit that content alone, and I publish that content. And then somebody goes and opens their phone on the bus, or alone late at night, or when they're bored, and they consume that content alone. And the only exchange of emotion and validation between the two of us is in the form of a view count, or if I'm really lucky, a snarky comment. There isn't actually any true exchange of recognition in the same way that if you saw somebody over and over again, you would have that exchange and you would get that validation from each other that your presence matters. We watch creators on Twitch change what they're doing to engage with chat. The most common pattern is for people to stop and say hello. And that combination of repetition, go back and watch the same channels where you're a known quantity and people know your name and it matters, and the fact that you are visible to each other and you can exchange emotion while you're doing that creates a level of investment that doesn't exist elsewhere. On Twitch, your earnings are a function, are linear to the depth of emotional connection you can create. If you're putting videos and tweets out into the universe, your earnings is a function of reach. This audience understands CPM better than most. That's not how the majority of earnings work on Twitch. Twitch is completely free to watch and use, and yet our streamers have earned billions of dollars over the last 10 years, predominantly through direct contributions from their audiences. That doesn't make a lot of sense to the average person, so we go and ask viewers, why is it that you're contributing to this thing that is free? And their overwhelming answer is, because I want it to keep existing, because I value this thing, and I want the streamer to keep going, and I want to recognize their efforts. There is a fantastic second function that comes as a result of that. If I'm in an environment where I am publishing privately and then you are consuming separately, the onus is on me to manage any abuse or difficulty from a community member, right? Trolls are my problem as the publisher. On Twitch, members of your community who are invested in the experience you create can also be those members of the community that keep that community safe and happy together. We have 7 million streamers who will go live on Twitch this month creating content for more than 100 million viewers. And 1.5 million of those viewers will take time to moderate a channel that they are in. They will go through and say, that comment's not welcome here, or that's not what we're about. And on behalf of the streamer, they will actively curate, promote, and protect those channels in a way that totally changes that experience for the content creator. I am literally and figuratively invested in this community, and it changes the way that I engage in it, and it changes my experience as a creator from one where I publish and the algorithm decides who my tribe is, to one where I own and am invested in that community. Why am I up on the stage, and why am I busy shilling this theory of community and why social in the word is wrong? There's another word that is starting to be everywhere, and in the next 2 or 3 years will be labeled on every app you see. Generative AI. I have heard a dozen pitches in the last 2 weeks of some iteration of generative AI for creative briefs. Insert your creative brief here, and we will create for you the perfect set of visuals at low cost. And one version of the future is that these algorithmically powered tribal networks are full of content not even created by a person, but an algorithmically created content distributed by an algorithm for very lonely and isolated consumption. I think that prediction of the future is wrong. True success in the future is going to be a question of how do we enable creators to create better community content more easily using that technology. Because there are three things I can promise you if you go ahead and you build a community app over a social app. One, it is enduring. Twitch has existed for 10 years, and Twitch will exist long into the future because our viewers don't just come for us, they come for our creators. The one thing every product designer can tell you over the last 10 years is a format is not a moat. Stories were not a moat, vertical video are not a moat, no algorithm is a moat. Your viewers and users come for the content being created by those creators. They are going to come for the exchange of emotion between those creators. And only true community design products can deliver those experiences in an enduring way. Two, it will be safer. An environment where I can create content free and easy, I can distribute it with no cost, also means that I can be a troll at no cost at those volumes. And it means the cost of being a creator is going to go up in terms of the amount of abuse I have to put up with. That isn't true on Twitch. If you think about it, 99% of your behavior isn't governed by laws. I very much doubt that anyone in this room understands the nuances of Canadian law before you step foot here in Toronto. It's also not illegal for you to stand up and heckle me right now. You're probably not going to do that, though, because you don't want to lose your badge and be escorted out. When you have spent money on something, when your reputation is invested in something, you self-moderate your behavior because you don't want to lose your investment. When you create that investment, you create a degree of safety that no algorithm can, and no AI policing of those algorithms can either. And lastly, people will value it. We don't know what the economic model of the internet is going to look like when it is all generative content. Nobody knows who large language models should pay. Nobody knows who's going to make money off of those. But I can tell you, at the scale of millions of creators and hundreds of millions of viewers, if you create an emotional connection between people creating content and the people consuming that content, they will literally value it and they will pay for it not just now, but long into the future. Thanks for coming.